Welcome to today's deep dive. We are incredibly glad you were joining us
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this one.
because today we're exploring a piece of ancient wisdom that feels um, shockingly tailored to the exact cultural moment you and I are living in right now.
It really is. It's a profound text to unpack.
Right, so our focus today is on Proverbs chapter 5.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're pulling from that classic biblical wisdom, which is traditionally framed as the intimate, urgent advice of King Solomon speaking directly to his son. But we are also looking at a companion analysis, and this analysis bridges these thousands of years old words directly with modern psychology and, relationship dynamics.
It's just a fascinating overlap between ancient philosophy and modern behavioral science.
Completely.
And the mission for us today is to distill this text's teachings on sexual integrity, personal discipline, and the hidden costs of moral compromise.
Right, because it is, at its core, an exploration of the choices we make when no one is looking, and how those isolated choices eventually cascade to shape our entire lives.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. The chapter opens with a really severe warning,
It does.
and it uses this incredibly poetic, almost cinematic language to describe the anatomy of temptation. It introduces the figure of the strange woman.
Right, which our analysis notes is a poetic symbol. It stands for unfaithful relationships and really just the broader concept of temptation itself.
And the description of the allure is deeply visceral. It says her lips drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil.
What's fascinating here is the deliberate psychological contrast the text sets up right from the jump.
How so?
Well, temptation is presented exactly as it is experienced in the human brain. It's sweet, frictionless, and incredibly appealing in the short term.
Right, the honeycomb represents that immediate, intense gratification.
Exactly, a sudden spike of reward. And the oil represents something smooth, easy to swallow, requiring absolutely no effort or friction.
It perfectly captures how moral compromises usually start, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. They don't start as massive, life-ruining decisions. They start as smooth, easy, sweet little moments.
But the text doesn't let you linger in that sweetness for very long.
No, it does not.
The whiplash is actually pretty intense. It goes from honey and oil directly into a brutal reality check, warning that her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as the two-edged sword.
And that her steps take hold on hell.
Yeah. And for anyone listening who might not be an ancient botanist, wormwood was a notoriously toxic, intensely bitter plant.
Right.
So it's a stark reminder that the initial attraction is essentially a biological trick designed to hide the ultimate cost.
And we really have to look at the ancient context to fully grasp why the language used here is so severe and uncompromising.
Because it wasn't just a personal issue back then.
Exactly. In ancient Near Eastern societies, adultery wasn't just viewed as a personal failing or some private moral slip.
It was an existential threat.
A literal existential threat to the community. Survival in those days depended heavily on tight-knit family units and strict tribal loyalty. Marriage contracts dictated inheritance structures, property lines, social stability. If you compromised that, you were literally threatening the social fabric and economic survival of your entire extended family.
You shattered community trust in a way that could leave vulnerable people completely destitute.
Right.
That historical context adds so much weight to it. But let's translate that for you, the listener, navigating the modern world.
Because it looks a bit different today.
Yeah. Today, that honeycomb might not look exactly the same, but the underlying dynamic is identical.
Totally.
Based on our companion analysis, modern temptation frequently takes the form of emotional affairs, digital infidelity, secret relationships, or pornography.
It's that late-night text message that seems harmless.
Right, the hidden browser tab.
Or just a lingering interaction with a coworker. It feels like honey in the moment. It's a quick dopamine hit.
Precisely. And the strategy the text offers for dealing with this isn't really what you might expect.
No, it's not.
It doesn't tell you to build up a massive reserve of willpower and fight the temptation head-on in the heat of the moment.
Right. The father's advice to his son is entirely about geographical and practical avoidance.
Verse 8 says, "Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house."
Don't even go near the door.
Don't even go near it. It's such a ruthlessly practical piece of advice.
It really is.
It makes me think of trying to stick to a strict diet. If you keep a box of fresh donuts right on your office desk and just rely on your internal willpower to not eat them for 8 hours,
You are going to eat a donut.
you're going to eat the donut. Proverbs is essentially saying, don't even walk down the donut aisle of the grocery store.
Because prevention is infinitely easier than recovery.
That's a perfect analogy. It's about recognizing your own human vulnerability and respecting the limits of your willpower.
But this does raise an important question for our modern context.
Which is?
How do we avoid the door when the door is a glowing rectangle sitting right in our pockets?
Oh, wow.
In the ancient world, avoiding a specific house was a physical action. Today, the frictionless oil of temptation is delivered through algorithms designed to hack our attention.
That is the million-dollar question right there.
Yeah.
I think the companion analysis addresses this beautifully by mapping the ancient advice onto modern habits.
Right. What does not going near the door look like today?
It means setting up aggressive digital boundaries.
Yeah.
It means installing content blockers, sharing your passwords with your spouse, or simply choosing to leave your phone in the kitchen when you go to bed.
It's about intentionally introducing friction into a system that tech companies have designed to be totally frictionless.
Exactly. And if you ignore that advice, both the ancient text and modern psychology are in lockstep regarding the painful ripple effects.
They are.
The text warns about giving your honor to others, wasting your years on the cruel, and having strangers filled with your wealth.
Ultimately, it paints a devastating picture of a person mourning at the very end of their life, when their flesh and body are consumed.
Crying out, "How have I hated instruction!"
That line, "How have I hated instruction," is incredibly heavy.
It's the sound of ultimate regret.
It really is. And the modern equivalents of that mourning are things we see playing out every single day.
We are talking about broken trust within families that takes decades to rebuild.
If it ever is rebuilt.
Right. We're talking about ruined professional reputations.
And when the text talks about strangers filled with your wealth, you can map that directly onto the legal and financial ruin of a messy divorce, alimony, and divided assets.
It's trading years of hard-won stability for a few fleeting moments of that smooth oil.
Which is exactly why the text doesn't just leave you sitting in the dark with these heavy warnings.
Thankfully.
Around verse 15, we see a profound shift in the tone. The wisdom literature pivots from the negative consequences of infidelity to a vibrant celebration of what you should actively pursue instead.
Yes, the text moves right into this beautiful, positive guidance. It says, "Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well."
I love that imagery.
I find it so compelling, but it probably requires a bit of historical framing to fully appreciate it.
It does. In the ancient Near East, you have to imagine a culture living in a harsh, arid desert environment. Water wasn't just a basic utility that you turned on at a tap. Water was the ultimate symbol of life, wealth, and sustenance.
So a personal well or cistern was a family's most prized possession.
Exactly. By comparing marriage to a personal well, the text is elevating it to the highest possible status. It emphasizes an exclusive, life-giving commitment.
A well provides deep, cool, consistent water that sustains you year-round.
Which is a direct contrast to the unpredictable, dangerous, and often contaminated waters found wandering in the streets.
So the core message is find your profound satisfaction at home. Cultivate and protect your own well.
And this flies directly in the face of our modern cultural narrative.
No, completely. We live in a society obsessed with the new, swiping right for the next thrill, constantly seeking that initial spark of the honeycomb.
Treating relationships almost like disposable consumer goods.
Yes. But healthy modern relationships require the exact opposite. They require mutual respect, shared history, and deep emotional and physical loyalty.
And the text enthusiastically celebrates the physical and emotional joy of that exact loyalty.
It really doesn't hold back.
No, it explicitly tells the reader to rejoice with the wife of thy youth, describing her as a loving hind and pleasant roe.
And just to clarify that poetic language, a hind and a roe are graceful, beautiful deer.
Right, which were the ultimate symbols of elegance, gentleness, and deep affection in ancient Near Eastern poetry.
The text even goes so far as to say, "Be ravished always with her love."
It is aggressively pushing back against the cultural misconception that faithfulness is just a boring, stifling restriction.
That's a crucial distinction. It's actually arguing that exclusivity is the very mechanism that creates a safe enough environment for true, lasting passion to flourish.
Yes, without the security of the well, you're just constantly hustling for water.
When you build the well and maintain the well, it sustains you for a lifetime.
It's the difference between a cheap, fleeting thrill and profound compounding joy.
Exactly. But this brings us to a critical juncture in our deep dive.
Right.
Up until now, we've been examining the deeply practical advice, the sociological cause and effect of our actions, and the psychological benefits of staying faithful.
Mm-hmm.
But right around verse 21, the chapter zooms out dramatically. It shifts from horizontal human relationships to the ultimate vertical spiritual reality behind all of this.
The text states, "For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings."
So here is where we transition into the deeper philosophical waters. Because when you hear a phrase like "the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord," it introduces a completely different layer of accountability.
It really does.
And immediately after establishing that God is intimately observing our choices, the text delivers this incredibly evocative imagery in verse 22.
It says, "His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins."
Holden with the cords of his sins. It is a brilliant, terrifying metaphor.
Yeah. What it is describing is the insidious trap of our own habits.
I hadn't really thought about habits as a rope we weave ourselves, but that perfectly captures the psychology of it.
Yeah.
You think you're just making a one-off choice in a vacuum, but you're actually weaving a cord.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of modern behavioral science, the overlap is stunning.
How so?
In psychology, we talk about neuroplasticity, dopamine desensitization, and habit loops. Every time a person gives in to that temporary illicit gratification, their brain literally wires itself to crave that exact stimulus again.
Only next time it requires a slightly stronger dose to get the same honeycomb effect.
Precisely. Repeated choices, whether that's a pattern of minor dishonesty, feeding a digital addiction, or continuously compromising your personal boundaries, they create deeply ingrained neural pathways.
You are, quite literally, wrapping another cord around your own wrists with every repeated compromise.
And eventually, you completely lose tomorrow's freedom because of today's lack of discipline.
So how can this information strengthen our trust and relationship with God? Because let's be honest, when the average person hears the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, the immediate reaction is often a sense of paranoia or defensiveness.
Oh, sure. It sounds like a cosmic security camera watching you.
Just waiting for you to step out of line so you can be punished.
Right.
If God is just watching us weave these cords, how does this text philosophically resolve that tension and actually strengthen our relationship with Him?
That is the pivotal question. If we look closely at the entire framework of the chapter, we see that God's watchful eye isn't about catching us in a mistake merely to punish us.
Okay.
It is fundamentally an expression of profound, loving protection. Look at the framing device. It's a father begging his son to listen so he doesn't destroy his own life.
God's perspective here is presented in the exact same way.
Because God possesses infinite foresight, he sees the long-term devastation, the wormwood, that our short-term desires completely blind us to. Therefore, his rules and his boundaries are actually guardrails for our joy and our stability.
Guardrails for our joy. That completely reframes the concept of divine obedience.
Doesn't it?
It's not God sitting on a cloud saying, "Don't touch the honeycomb because I don't want you to have any fun."
Right.
It's a creator saying, "Don't consume that because I designed your biology and your psychology, and I know for a fact it turns to toxic wormwood in your system."
I love you too much to sit back and watch you poison yourself.
Exactly. When the text says God pondereth all our goings, it implies a deep, meticulous care.
He is intimately invested in our trajectory. Understanding this should radically strengthen our relationship with him.
Because it proves he cares deeply about our character.
Our true psychological freedom and our ultimate human flourishing. He isn't a distant, disinterested rulemaker. He is intimately concerned with the micro-decisions that shape who we are becoming.
That perspective makes the idea of divine accountability feel less like a threat and much more like an anchor. It's incredibly grounding to know that the architect of reality cares enough about your specific life to say, "Hey, don't walk near the door of that house."
It shows that he values our honor, our wealth, our mental health, and our years, often much more than we value them ourselves in the heat of a moment.
When we are caught up in the dopamine rush of temptation, we are terrifyingly willing to throw decades of stability away for 20 minutes of pleasure.
But God is standing there saying, your life, your well, and your future are worth infinitely more than this cheap, destructive substitute.
And that profound disconnect is the tragedy outlined in the final verse of the chapter.
Verse 23.
It concludes the thought by saying, "He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray."
What's vital to understand here is that dying without instruction doesn't mean the roadmap wasn't provided.
The entire chapter was the instruction.
Exactly. It means the individual actively chose to reject the roadmap. By choosing to submit our immediate desires to God's broader wisdom, we avoid wandering astray in the greatness of our own folly.
We avoid becoming that tragic figure mourning at the end of their life, bound by the cords they wove themselves.
It really requires a massive paradigm shift in how we view trust and autonomy.
Trusting God in this context isn't just a passive belief that he exists. It's an active trust in his design for human flourishing over our own immediate impulses.
It's trusting that when he says a certain behavior inevitably leads to a two-edged sword, he is telling the objective truth.
Even if our current culture, our peers, and our social media feeds are screaming that it's totally fine, completely normal,
Yeah.
and entirely harmless.
And this is exactly where the ancient wisdom intersects so powerfully with our modern challenge. We live in an ecosystem that relentlessly monetizes and celebrates temporary gratification. It actively encourages us to pursue the honeycomb at all costs.
And it frequently mocks the very concept of boundaries or exclusivity.
But the ancient wisdom of Proverbs reminds us of a hard truth. True freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want, with whomever you want.
That version of freedom is an illusion.
An illusion that actually leads directly to being held by the cords of your sins.
True freedom is having the internal discipline to choose what is right and sustainable.
So that your future remains open, healthy, and completely unburdened by crippling regret.
It is the ultimate paradox of human nature. Putting strict boundaries on your desires, committing exclusively to your own will, aggressively staying far away from the door of temptation.
That is the exact mechanism that produces true freedom and deep joy.
While chasing every passing desire you have without any restriction is the exact mechanism that turns you into a prisoner of your own habits.
And realizing that God designed the moral universe this way out of love is what transforms our relationship with him.
When we finally see his guidance, not as a restriction, but as a roadmap away from unnecessary suffering and toward a stable, flourishing life, obedience stops being a chore or a legalistic burden.
It becomes an act of profound gratitude. We follow his instruction not out of fear, but because we fundamentally trust his character and his vision for our lives.
That is an incredibly powerful place to land. Let's do a quick recap of the core lessons we've extracted from these sources for you today.
Sounds good.
First, temptation always hides its true cost. What looks and tastes like frictionless honey often ends up being toxic wormwood.
Second, faithfulness builds compounding, lasting stability. Drinking exclusively from your own well and investing deeply in mutual respect and loyalty is what actually creates long-term happiness and passion.
And finally, personal discipline today protects your freedom tomorrow. Your daily habits are constantly weaving cords. Make sure you are weaving cords of strength and connection, not the binding cords of sin.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that pushes beyond just our individual choices.
Okay.
We've talked extensively today about personal discipline and how the cords of sin bind the individual. But if we consider the ancient tribal context we discussed earlier, those cords never just bound one person.
They bound and dragged down the whole community.
Right. If our private habits inevitably shape our public reality, how might the secret, heavily guarded digital habits of our current generation be quietly rewriting the social fabric of the next decade?
Wow.
When millions of individuals are privately bound by the cords of digital temptation, the entire culture eventually pays the price in lost trust, broken homes, and fractured communities.
That is a phenomenal point.
Yeah.
The private choices we make when no one is looking don't just shape our own destiny. They become the building blocks of the society our children will inherit.
It is ancient wisdom that is flawlessly designed for the complexities of the modern world.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through Proverbs 5. Now, we want to leave you with one final essential question to carry with you as you go about your day. How will you apply this information in your life?